They fired her while the floor was still wet with blood. The heart monitor in Trauma 2 was screaming, a single unbroken note that drilled into the skull when Dr. Andrew Collins turned his back on the patient and pointed down the hallway. "Get out of my department, now!" His voice was sharp, controlled, practiced, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. Laura Bennett stood there, 41 years old, one hand bare and red, the other still pressing gauze into a man's upper thigh where blood had been spraying seconds earlier. Her breathing was slow, too slow for the chaos around her. Her left leg trembled inside the heavy black orthopedic boot, the brace creaking softly with each shift of weight. Jessica Price laughed under her breath at the nurse's station. "You see that limp?" she whispered, not bothering to hide it. "That's what happens when you can't keep up." Her smile was tight, pleased, hungry. Collins didn't look at the patient again. "Sterility matters," he snapped. "Protocol matters. You don't." His eyes flicked to Laura's hands, then away, as if she were already gone. "If he dies, it's on you." The patient groaned, a wet animal sound. Laura felt it in her bones, the smell of iron, the heat, the pressure. Her grip tightened until her knuckles went white. She said nothing. She stepped back. Boot, drag, boot. No one noticed the way the bleeding had stopped. No one noticed the way the room had gone quiet around her, like something important had just left and taken the air with it. They had decided who she was long before she ever opened her mouth. In the break room, the fluorescent lights hummed like a bad memory. Laura sat on a plastic chair that wobbled under her weight, her left leg stretched straight out, boot still on. She loosened the top strap just enough to breathe. The pain pulsed, deep and rhythmic, not sharp, not new. Pain like that didn't demand attention. It waited. Outside the door, voices drifted in, careless, confident. Collins again. "She's a liability," he said. "Always has been. You can't run a trauma center with dead weight slowing everyone down." Megan Price answered him, softer now, conspiratorial. Administration won't miss her. No one does. Laura closed her eyes. For a moment, the hospital vanished. The hum became rotor wash. The smell of bleach turned into burning diesel and dust. Men shouting names instead of room numbers. Blood that didn't stop unless you made it stop. She opened her eyes again before the memory could finish the job. Down the hall, a nurse rushed past, eyes wide, sneakers squeaking. Someone called for more blood. Someone swore. The night kept moving without her, and that hurt more than the words. She stood slowly, testing her weight. The brace held. It always did. They thought the limp meant weakness. They thought silence meant fear. They had mistaken discipline for surrender and survival for smallness. Laura picked up her badge from the counter. The plastic felt lighter than it should have. As she clipped it to her pocket, her reflection stared back from the darkened microwave door. Calm, measured, unbroken. They had no idea what they'd just pushed out into the hallway. The hallway didn't widen for her. It never did. Laura moved through it anyway, the camera tight on her boots as they crossed scuffed linoleum, the soft drag audible beneath the alarms. Faces turned and turned away. A resident stiffened as she passed, then pretended to study a chart. A tech met her eyes and looked down, guilt flickering and gone. The hospital breathed around her, mechanical and indifferent, a living thing that ate hours and spit out names. At the nurse's station, Megan leaned back in her chair, twirling a pen. "Inventory's your thing now, right?" she said, loud enough to land. Laura didn't answer. She reached for a clipboard, steady hands sliding it free, and the pen stopped twirling. A gurney burst through the doors, rain on metal, a paramedic shouting vitals that didn't add up. The smell hit first. Copper. Wet cloth. Panic. Laura's head lifted without permission. Her eyes tracked the wound pattern, the angle of the blood, the way the man's foot kept twitching. She felt the old switch click, the one she never talked about. In. Focused. Cold. Collins cut across her path, blocking the view with his white coat. "Move," he said, irritation thin as glass. "This isn't your call." Laura's jaw tightened. She stepped aside, but her gaze stayed locked on the gurney until it disappeared, memorizing details no one else saw. When the doors slammed shut, the noise surged. Laura exhaled, slow, controlled. They thought they had reassigned her. They thought they had contained her. The truth followed her down the hall, patient as pain, waiting for the moment it would be needed. The scream came before the announcement. A monitor wailed somewhere near Trauma 3, sharp and wrong, and the rhythm of the floor changed instantly. Feet ran. Voices stacked over each other. A resident cursed as a cart clipped the wall. Laura was at the crash carts, checking seals, when the call finally broke through the noise. Gunshot wound. Male. 30s. Hypertensive. ETA under 1 minute. The words hit her chest like a fist. The gurney exploded through the doors. Blood was already everywhere, a bright arterial spray that painted the floor in frantic arcs. The patient thrashed once, then stilled, eyes wide and unfocused. A second-year resident froze at the foot of the bed, hands hovering, mind empty. "Pressure!" someone shouted. No one moved fast enough. Laura stepped in without asking. She didn't reach for gloves. She reached for weight. Her shoulder drove down, finding the femoral point by feel, muscle memory older than this building. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. "Tourniquet," she said, not loud, not pleading, high and tight. "Now." The resident blinked, then obeyed, hands shaking as he cinched it where she indicated. Collins stormed in as the room steadied. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped, eyes on her bare hands. "This is a sterile field." Laura didn't look at him. "Sterility doesn't matter to a corpse," she said, calm as ice. For a beat, no one breathed. Then the vitals crept back from the edge, and the room exhaled. Colin's jaw set. He saw the save. He chose not to see her. The reprimand landed after the bleeding stopped. Collins waited until the room settled, until the adrenaline drained just enough to sting. "Get cleaned up, Bennett," he said, voice low and sharp, a private blade. "Next time you follow protocol, or you're done here." He stared at her hands like evidence. Infection kills. Liability kills faster. Around them, people busied themselves with lines and monitors, eyes carefully elsewhere. Megan watched from the station, lips pressed thin, satisfied. Laura nodded once. "Yes, doctor." She stepped back, careful, letting others take over. The patient's chest rose and fell. Color crept back into his face. No one said, "Thank you." The room moved on. In the sink alcove, water thundered over porcelain. Laura scrubbed until the red slid away, until her skin burned. The brace complained when she shifted. A small metallic click she swallowed with a breath. In the mirror, her face was still. The kind of still you earned. She shut the tap and listened to the hospital roar reclaim the space. Down the hall, Megan's voice floated, light and cruel. "Did you see her?" Always trying to be the hero. Collins answered, clipped. "I won't have cowboys in my department. We do this by the book." Laura dried her hands, folded the towel once, and dropped it. The book didn't bleed. People did. An overhead call cracked the air again. Multiple inbound. MVC. Unknown count. The night was turning. Laura clipped her badge back on and picked up the clipboard. They thought the warning had ended it. They didn't know the worst hours were just arriving, and that when everything broke at once, there would be no time left for titles. The phone at the charge desk rang once and went dead, and the room knew before anyone spoke. Megan answered, her smile evaporating as the dispatcher talked. She straightened, color draining. "Say that again." "How many?" She hung up and swallowed. "Mass casualty. Bus rollover on the interstate. First units 5 minutes out." The words cracked the ceiling. Collins snapped into motion, barking orders. Confidence lacquered on. "Clear the bays. Call in surgery. Move." The ER surged, but the surge was uneven, panic leaking through the seams. Laura was already moving. Beds cleared, lines coiled, warmers on. She didn't hurry. She accelerated, controlled, relentless. Boot, drag, boot. She moved 4 patients in the time it took others to argue. A young nurse fumbled a latch and froze. Laura's hand closed over hers, firm. "Breathe." "Then move." The latch clicked. The nurse did. Sirens layered the air. Then the doors blew open. Rain, blood, shouting. Male, 50s, chest crush. Female, 20s, open fracture, head strike. Stretchers stacked like wreckage. Collins planted himself center frame, voice rising, scattering focus. Laura worked the edges, catching what fell between commands, a slipping airway, a pressure cuff left loose, a bag hung wrong. Then she saw the girl, small, grey, too still. The medic's voice broke. No pulse, no room. Trauma 1 full, trauma 2 full. Put her in the hall. The stretcher stopped under the lights, abandoned by necessity. Laura let the wheelchair roll away. She surged forward. The pain flared white, and she ignored it. "Stop compressions. Check rhythm." Her voice cut clean. The monitor showed chaos. "Ventricular fibrillation." Charge it, now. The shock lifted the small body off the mattress and dropped it back into stillness. Resume compressions, Laura said, already moving. She bagged, watched the chest fail to rise, felt the resistance under her palm. Airways crushed. Her eyes flicked to the neck, swelling fast, skin going tight and shiny. She tried once, then stopped herself. No time for hope. Surgical airway. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask. A medic shook his head, panicked. We need a doctor. Laura looked past him. Collins was buried in a chest, shouting about a bleeder. He wasn't coming. She held out her hand. Scalpel. Megan appeared at her elbow, breath sharp. You can't do that. It's illegal. You'll lose your license. Laura didn't look at her. 2 minutes to brain death, she said. Decide. Megan backed away. Laura didn't hesitate. She tore open the kit, the blade flashing once under the lights. Her hands were steady. She palpated, found the membrane by feel, cut clean and fast. Blood welled. She ignored it, slid the tube home, sealed it with tape. Bag. The chest rose. Color crept back. We've got a pulse, the medic said, disbelief cracking his voice. A hand grabbed Laura's shoulder and spun her. Colin's face was white with fury. What do you think you're doing? She met his eyes. Saving a life. The hallway had gone silent, and in that silence, something irreversible had just happened. Get out, Collins said, loud enough for the hall to hear. He pointed toward the exit like a verdict already signed. You are suspended pending investigation. You performed an invasive procedure without authorization. Security. His voice didn't shake. He didn't look at the child breathing now, pink returning to her cheeks. He looked at Laura as if she were a mess to be cleaned. A medic tried to speak. Doctor, she saved her. Collins cut him off with a glance. I said get out. Megan stood a step behind him, eyes bright, relief flickering into triumph. Laura looked once at the girl, chest rising in a fragile rhythm. Then she untied her gown and dropped it into the red bin. The room felt smaller without her in it. The walk to the exit stretched. Boot, drag, boot. The sound echoed, each step a punctuation mark. People watched from doorways, frozen between shame and fear. No one stopped her. At the security desk, a guard avoided her eyes. I'm sorry, he said, because that's what people say when they choose orders over truth. Laura nodded. I know. Outside, the night air hit hard. Cold. Clean. Sirens still cut the dark behind her. She sat on the curb and lifted the boot, fingers shaking as she loosened the strap. The pain came, steady and familiar. She breathed through it. The hospital doors slid shut, sealing the noise inside. Laura Bennett stared ahead, calm returning, and understood that the worst part wasn't being thrown out. It was knowing they would rewrite what happened, and that for now, the lie would win. By morning, the story had already changed. In a glass office overlooking the parking lot, Colin sat across from Richard Halstead, hands folded, posture relaxed. He spoke softly, regret practiced into every syllable. "She panicked," he said. I tried to stop her. The child was seconds from dying when I arrived. I stabilized the airway and managed the aftermath. Halstead nodded, sweat shining at his temples. Liability hummed in the room like electricity. He wanted an ending that didn't involve subpoenas. In the waiting area, the girl's parents clutched paper cups and each other. Collins approached with a measured smile, coat crisp, voice warm. "She's a fighter," he said. "We did everything we could." "Thank you," the mother whispered, breaking. "Thank you for saving our daughter." Collins accepted the gratitude, the hug, the promise of a donation discussed in careful tones. He did not mention the hallway. He did not mention the blade. Down the corridor, Megan leaned against the wall, listening, heart racing with a thrill she mistook for justice. "Good riddance," she murmured. Collins passed her, and didn't slow. People like Laura Bennett don't belong in a modern trauma center. Across town, Laura sat on her couch, leg elevated, the apartment quiet in a way hospitals never were. She opened a small wooden box and touched cold metal, ribbons dulled by time. The lie had momentum now. She knew how this part went. She also knew momentum could be stopped. It just took weight and timing and someone willing to step into the open when everyone else hid. The engines were heard before they were seen. 3 black SUVs rolled into the ambulance bay and stopped in perfect alignment, tires whispering on wet concrete. Doors opened together. Men stepped out with the economy of motion that comes from long practice, eyes scanning, hands loose but ready. The hospital felt it, a pressure shift, a quiet falling over the noise. Conversations thinned. Someone laughed and stopped mid-breath. A man in a navy dress uniform emerged last, movements deliberate. Captain Daniel Wright, mid-40s, shoulders squared, ribbons dense across his chest. He removed his sunglasses and took in the lobby like a grid, not a room. Halstead hurried out, tie crooked. "Excuse me, sir, you can't park there. This is an emergency zone." Wright walked past him as if he were furniture. "I'm looking for the chief of trauma," Wright said, voice carrying without strain. Collins stepped forward, smile ready, hand extended. "Andrew Collins, how can I help the United States Navy?" Wright didn't take the hand. "You're in charge of the floor." Collins' soul tightened. "I am." "Good." Wright turned his head slightly. "Then you can explain why the woman who saved my goddaughter's life is being escorted out like a criminal." The lobby went dead quiet. Collins blinked. "Your goddaughter?" Wright's eyes hardened. "Emily Harris." I watched the footage. I watched a hallway save while you stood elsewhere. He looked past Collins. "Where is Laura Bennett?" The question landed, heavy and final, and for the first time that morning, the lie began to crack. She was standing by the lockers, cane in hand, when the room turned toward her. Wright's gaze found Laura and softened in a way that startled everyone watching. He crossed the distance and stopped 3 feet away, boots planted, spine straight. "Attention on deck," he said, and the men behind him snapped to attention, heels together, Silence absolute. Laura's breath caught, not from fear, from recognition. "Hello, Laura," Wright said quietly. "It's been a long time." She nodded once. "Hello, Daniel." Collins laughed, sharp and brittle. "This is absurd. She's just a nurse." Wright turned on him so fast, Collins flinched. "Just a nurse," he repeated, tasting the words. "You think she limps because she's weak? She limps because she took a rifle round through the femur, dragging me down a mountainside so my men could live." The lobby inhaled as one. Wright faced the room. "Lieutenant Commander Laura Bennett, United States Navy Nurse Corps, attached to Special Operations." He lifted his hand and saluted her, slow and held, a salute reserved for superiors and the dead. One by one, the men stepped forward. "You packed my chest in a dust storm, ma'am. You stayed awake 3 days, holding pressure when the bird couldn't land." Laura's cane wobbled. A hand steadied her. "She was never a liability," Wright said, voice carrying to the glass doors. "She was the reason we came home, and you fired her." The fallout was immediate and brutal. Halstead's face collapsed, the color draining as Wright's words settled into the walls. Collins tried to speak, then stopped when the parents pushed through the crowd. The father's voice was steady and cold. "You lied to us. You took credit for saving our daughter." He turned to Halstead. "I sit on this board. This ends now." Security stepped in, not toward Laura, but toward Collins. His white coat hit the floor, dignity following it down. Megan had already disappeared. Applause started somewhere near triage, tentative at first, then rolling, filling the lobby until it pressed against the glass. Laura stood in it, stunned, the sound washing over years she hadn't known how to carry. Wright moved closer, lowering his voice. "We have a program at Little Creek, advanced trauma training. We need someone who's been there when the book runs out." Laura swallowed. "I can't run like I used to." Wright smiled. "We don't need you to run. We need you to teach." He offered his hand. "Triple the pay. Full benefits. No politics. Just lives." Laura looked at the hospital, then at the men who had followed her into hell and back. She straightened, the ache in her leg easing into something else. Purpose. She took his hand. "Let's get to work." 6 months later, the wind cut across the training grounds at Little Creek, cold and honest, the kind that stripped excuses bare. Laura Bennett stood on the platform above the pit, cane planted, eyes sharp. Below her, recruits slogged through mud and chaos, hands shaking, minds fraying. She watched the hesitation form, the moment before panic took over, and she crushed it with a voice that carried. Pressure first, airway second. You move, or they die. The cadence returned to her step. Boot, drag, boot, not weakness, a rhythm earned. She went down into the mud when a candidate froze, pushed him aside and found the point by feel. The bleeding stopped. Confidence followed. Later, in the quiet, Wright stood beside her and said the scholarship would bear her name. She shook her head once. "It's not about me. It's about them coming home." He nodded, because that was the truth. At dusk, She watched the line march back together, taller than they'd arrived. The pain would always be there, so would the memory. But the shame was gone. Scars were not defects. They were proof. If this story moved you, show your support with a like and subscribe for more stories about quiet courage and earned respect. Share your thoughts in the comments with these 3 words. Respect our veterans.